Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into Cargill's 2024 annual report. It's called Nourishing the Future.
Right. And our aim is to sort of pull out the key insights for you.
Exactly. How is this huge global company trying to tackle, well, the massive challenge of feeding more people sustainably?
And the report itself, visually, it's quite striking right from the start.
How so?
Well, you see all of these images, lots of different people involved across the whole food system, farmers, factory workers, scientists, and labs. It really gives you a sense of the human side, the sheer scope.
Interesting. Sets the stage. So for you listening, we're going to try and boil this down. Focus on Cargill's strategy for these global food issues, what they're really doing on sustainability, and where they're heading with innovation.
Yeah, without getting totally bogged down in every single detail. Okay, so where do we start? The report kicks off with the scale of the challenge, right?
It does. And it's pretty stark. We're looking at, what, another 500 million people on Earth by 2030?
Yeah, that's the number they use. 500 million.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of extra mouths to feed.
And that means agriculture needs to produce significantly more. They estimate 45 to 50 million metric tons more each year.
Which is already a huge ask, but then you add the constraints.
Right. Less land, potentially.
Yeah.
Definitely water scarcity issues, and all happening under the shadow of, climate change impacts.
It's a real balancing act. You can't just ramp up production old style.
So Cargill's position seems to be that agriculture isn't just facing the problem, it is the solution, or a big part of it anyway.
That's the core message. They believe the sector can transform itself to feed everyone sustainably.
And they talk a lot about partnerships, don't they? Working with others across the whole chain.
Constantly. From farmers to processors, retailers, customers. They stress it's a collaborative effort, which makes sense. I mean, the food system is so interconnected.
Okay, so let's get into some specifics. They have this section, Farming for the Future. What's that about?
It seems to be about supporting farmers directly, helping them stay viable while also meeting that growing demand responsibly.
And the big program there seems to be Region Connect. Cargill Region Connect.
Yes, that's definitely highlighted. They've got farmers signed up across, 24 U.S. states and 6 countries in Europe already?
And a big goal, too. 10 million acres of North American farmland using regenerative practices by the end of the decade.
Which they helpfully point out is about the size of Switzerland.
Wow. Okay, that gives you a scale. And remind us, these regenerative practices, what are they aiming for?
Things like cover crops, no-till or low-till farming. It's all about improving soil health, fundamentally.
Right. Better soil means better water retention, less runoff.
Exactly. Healthier soil holds water better, needs fewer inputs maybe over time, and crucially, it can also pull carbon out of the atmosphere and store it.
So it's climate mitigation and resilience.
That's the idea, plus better farm productivity, hopefully. It's looking at farming as part of an ecosystem.
Makes sense. And then getting those crops from the farm to, well, everywhere else. They're investing in infrastructure, too.
Oh, yeah. Storage, processing, transport. They mention acquiring soy facilities in South America used to be granola.
Ah, okay. So strengthening those supply chain links, making sure food gets where it needs to go securely.
Precisely. It's about connecting farmers to markets more effectively, building resilience.
Okay, moving on, there's a whole section on leading from the front lines. This sounds like it's focused on their own people.
It is really recognizing the role of their workers in, the ports, the processing plants, the day-to-day operations globally.
Saying they're essential, basically.
And backing that up with investment. They talk about training, new technology, operational upgrades.
They mentioned something called the Factory of the Future initiative. What's involved there?
It seems to be about bringing in more automation, digital tools, using data analytics more effectively in their plants.
And the goals are?
Well, efficiency, obviously, producing more, but also significantly safety, automating tough or risky jobs, and better customer service follows from that.
They give an example, don't they? Egg stacking.
Yeah, apparently it was a really physically demanding job, lifting thousands of pounds of eggs per shift. Now automation makes it safer and faster.
That really brings it home, doesn't it? The direct impact on workers.
It does, and they frame safety and well-being as a core value, linked directly to serving customers and growth. Which, speaking of growth, the report mentions revenues.
Yeah, I saw that. $160 billion in fiscal 2024.
That's a lot. It shows the scale we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And alongside the business, they mentioned community contributions, too. Around $130 million in the same year.
Right. Towards food system resilience, food security, sustainability projects, equity, disaster relief, a range of things.
There was a specific example about housing. In Colorado.
Yes, $40 million invested with a partner, Portmanteau Partners, for affordable housing for their frontline employees in Fort Morgan. That's quite a direct investment in their workforce community.
Definitely seems like a way to build loyalty, maybe reduce turnover. Makes sense long term.
And they're investing in developing people, too. This Cargill Leadership Academy trained over 4,200 leaders.
And I saw a mention of an apprenticeship pilot, hiring for skills over degrees.
Yeah, that's interesting. Suggests a shift, maybe broadening the talent pool based on practical skills needed in their plants.
Which connects to another program powered by plants, training supervisors.
Right, over 2,800 plant supervisors trained specifically on leading people, plus making hiring faster. Again, focus on empowering those frontline teams.
Okay, so beyond their own workforce, the report talks about nourishing people's future. Yeah. This section feels more focused on uh, equity and inclusion globally.
Exactly. Empowering people, especially in the communities they source from or operate in, creating access, opportunities.
Like the She Thrives initiative with CARE in Vietnam.
Yeah, educating 1,000 women smallholder farmers. Empowering women in agriculture often has really wide benefits, for families, communities.
And the Cameroon example with Lady Agries seems similar, providing solar dryers.
Right. Climate smart tech helps women process food better, reduce waste, get better prices, improve household food security. They quote Manan Crescen's Badiga Balibi, talking about how much it helped reduce post-harvest losses.
Tangible impacts. And there's another one in Mexico with Hichacampo.
En pro de la mejor, helping 200 women farmers earn income from selling eggs. So it's a pattern across different regions, different types of farming.
And it's not just big programs, but employee volunteering too. These Cargill Cares Councils.
Yeah, nearly 500 of them, employee-led groups supporting local causes. They quote Uriel Maldonado from Mexico, talking about making a difference locally. It grounds the big corporate stuff.
And water access is another piece. Cargill Currents.
Partnering with Global Water Challenge. Tailored water solutions in Brazil, India, West Africa, aiming to help 150,000 people get better water access by 2030, tackling a really fundamental need.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Nourishing customers' future. This seems to be about innovation and working with their big customers.
Definitely. And a major point here is their work on eliminating trans fats, the industrially produced ones, ITFAs.
Right. They were apparently the first global edible oils supplier to meet WHO best practices.
That's what they state. And they say they've removed over 1.5 billion pounds of products containing ITFAs over 25 years, including for huge companies like PepsiCo. That's a massive public health contribution, potentially.
Renee Lammers from PepsiCo even comments on their commitment. And other partnerships. Nestle.
Yeah, that one's interesting because it's multifaceted, using cocoa shells, normally waste, to make low-emission fertilizer.
Circular economy thinking.
Right. Plus sourcing traceable cocoa for Kit Kat and supporting regenerative agriculture for Nestle's pet food ingredients. It's really integrated.
And with Mars. Renewable energy.
A joint purchase of wind energy from an offshore farm in Germany, helping Mars meet their emissions goals. Barry Parkin from Mars stresses how important these partnerships are.
Shows how companies can team up on sustainability. What about regional innovation? Asia Pacific.
They highlight a new cocoa development center in Indonesia.
Okay.
A first-of-its-kind fresh meat pet food plant in China, Petmaster, and a new global innovation center there for swine customers, too. Seems like a big focus on that region.
And in Europe. A protein innovation hub in France.
Yeah, for co-creating chicken products with customers. And again, linking back, these factory of the future investments improve safety and efficiency, which helps customers too. They quote an employee, Damaris Garcia, on the benefits of new automation.
And one more customer example, McDonald's cage-free eggs.
Right, helping McDonald's reach their 100% cage-free goal in the U.S. ahead of schedule, working with egg producers, shows they can manage complex supply chain shifts.
Okay, finally, the big picture. Nourishing the planet's future. Sustainability overarching everything.
That's the message. It's embedded in their purpose, guides decisions, and they point to their ESG reports for transparency. The FY23 one is out, FY24 is coming.
And some pretty cool tech here. The Pyxis Ocean with the wind wings.
Yeah, that's quite something. Retrofitting a huge bulk carrier ship with these massive rigid sails to use wind power.
Cutting fuel use and emissions. Have they seen results?
Early results are promising, they say. Across the Indian, Pacific, Atlantic Oceans, it apparently became the most efficient ship of its type based on its GHG rating.
That could be significant for shipping if it scales up, couldn't it?
Absolutely. Shipping emissions are a huge issue. Wind assist could be a major part of the solution. Then there's deforestation.
Ah, yes, a critical issue, especially in South America.
They're accelerating their commitment, aiming to eliminate deforestation and land conversion from their direct and indirect row crop supply chains in Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay by 2025.
That's soon. And covers a critical region for biodiversity and food production.
Very critical. They note about 30% of global trade in soy, corn, wheat, cotton comes from just those three countries. So it's a big commitment.
And we mentioned regenerative agriculture earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They're expanding those programs globally.
Yep. Region Connect in Europe now too. Resolute in Brazil, Sustain Connect for canola farmers down in Australia, supporting farmers like Stephen Flagg in Indiana, who they feature.
Okay. And methane from livestock, another big climate issue in ag.
They've developed a feed supplement, Silver, that can cut methane emissions from cattle by up to 10%.
Up to 10%.
Okay. And importantly, they got the methodology for measuring those reductions approved by the gold standard.
What does gold standard approval mean practically?
It adds a lot of credibility. It's a respected independent standard, verifies the reductions are real and measured properly. It's not just Cargill saying it works.
Got it. So potentially improving animal performance and cutting emissions, as Sander van Zijderveld from Cargill points out.
And lastly, they touch on the bioeconomy, using renewable nature-based stuff instead of fossil fuels. A plant-based alternative to petroleum jelly they call Botana Design 105 and their Eversweet stevia sweetener, made via fermentation, which they say has a lower environmental footprint. Broader, sustainable alternatives.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, looking back at the report, what's the big picture takeaway?
Well, it's definitely a complex, multi-pronged approach, isn't it? They're trying to address population growth, sustainability, innovation, all at once, across the entire food system.
Yeah, we've touched on supporting farmers, investing in their own people, focusing on equity, partnering with customers, and these big environmental projects like the wind ship and deforestation goals.
It really highlights just how interconnected everything is in the global food system, from a farm in Brazil to a product on a shelf in Europe, you know?
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about that interconnectedness, the sheer complexity of feeding everyone sustainably.
Yeah, and how do individual choices we make connect with what huge companies like Cargill are doing? What other questions does looking into a report like this raise for you about where food and farming are headed?